General Reinhard Heydrich, leader of the Gestapo and high-ranking officer of the SS, was one of the most feared figures in the Third Reich, the mastermind behind the Holocaust and the final solution. His death in an attack organized by Czech commandos, who parachuted in from England, would lead to the killing of hundreds of people as reprisal in Czechoslovakia. Reinhard Heydrich was born on the 7th of March, 1904, in the city of Halle an der Saale in Saxony, Germany. His entire family came from a musical background, with his father being a well-known musician and opera singer at the Halle Conservatory, while his mother was a pianist and a devout Catholic in a region where Protestantism, curiously, was the majority religion. Like his parents, from a very young age, Heydrich showed an interest in music, demonstrating talent with both the violin and the piano. When the First World War broke out in 1914, at only 10 years of age, he enrolled in the Civil Defense Volunteer Corps, responsible for auxiliary tasks in the rear guard. Once the conflict ended in 1918, and with an adventurous adolescent spirit, he joined the Freikorps militia, within which he fought in a series of street clashes against the communists during the German Civil War. In 1922, Heydrich displeased his parents when he announced that he was abandoning his music studies to join the Navy of the Weimar Republic, the Reichsmarine, immediately upon turning 18 years old. Thus, he entered the Naval Officer School at the Kiel base, where for 9 years he served as an exemplary sailor in administrative duties, earning the admiration of Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, who praised his work as an organizer in intelligence-related matters. He also stood out for his athletic skills, since in addition to practicing swimming, sailing, and fencing, his height of 1.85 m gave him an excellent physical aptitude. However, his military career was cut short in 1931 due to his involvement in a case of unwanted pregnancy with the daughter of a naval contractor of IG Farben, who had business with Admiral Erich Raeder. This incident led to his dishonorable discharge by the Navy Court of Honor. Coinciding precisely with his expulsion from the German Navy, on the very 1st of May 1931, Heydrich joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, in Hamburg, and its armed paramilitary wing, the SS. During this period, he stood out as an excellent organizer, because in less than 2 years, in 1932, he rose to the rank of Brigadier General, or SS Brigadeführer, and became one of the favorites of the Reichsführer of the SS, Heinrich Himmler. As a result of these merits, and after blackmailing President Paul Hindenburg into appointing Adolf Hitler as Chancellor, threatening him after finding a document implicating his son Oskar Hindenburg in a corruption case, in 1933, when the Führer came to power and founded the Third Reich, appointed Heydrich to command the SS in Munich, then to lead the entire militia in Bavaria, and finally named him Chief of Security in Berlin. Outside political and military life, Heydrich also formed his own family after marrying a woman named Lena Mathilde von Osten. From this marriage, 4 children were born, whom they named Klaus, Heider, Silke, and Martha. When the Reichstag, the German parliament, was set on fire on the 27th of February 1933, Heydrich was one of those in charge of carrying out the arrests of those deemed responsible and bringing the communist Marinus van der Lubbe to justice, who was executed the following year. During the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, Heydrich efficiently directed the SS, arresting and executing in the purge all the leaders of the SA, including Ernst Röhm, who curiously was the godfather of his own eldest son, Klaus. As a reward for this flawless operation, which granted absolute power to the SS, Hitler promoted Heydrich to Supreme Chief of Security of the entire Third Reich. Heydrich's rapid rise in the NSDAP provoked envy among many of his comrades, who attempted to politically undermine him. For example, on one occasion they spread the false accusation that he belonged to the Jewish race, a rumor that almost cost him his position, until a tribunal rigorously examined his family tree and confirmed that it had all been an elaborate lie. In fact, the real reason for the hatred toward Heydrich was fear, for he controlled the intelligence service and therefore the files of all party members, in addition to being utterly ruthless toward those who broke the rules. Wilhelm Frick forbade him entry into the Ministry of the Interior to prevent him from prying into documents. Hitler once said of him, "He has a heart of stone," while Heydrich himself defined his role as being the chief in charge of the garbage dump of the German Reich. During Kristallnacht in 1938, Heydrich ordered the gendarmerie not to intervene against the wave of popular violence directed at the Jews, which resulted in the deaths of numerous people and the destruction of hundreds of businesses and synagogues. The following year, in 1939, Hitler promoted him to chief of the Reich Main Security Office, placing under his command the Gestapo, the Kripo, criminal police, and the SD, with his rank in the SS being only one step below Himmler. Moments before the outbreak of the Second World War, on the night of the 31st of August to the 1st of September 1939, Heydrich launched Operation Reinhard, which consisted of dressing murdered prisoners in German soldier uniforms, then staging a shooting at the Gleiwitz radio station and blaming the incident on Poland, in the hope that Great Britain and France would remain neutral. The scheme failed, however, because on the 3rd of September, London and Paris declared war on Germany. Not all of Heydrich's deceptions failed during the conflict. Operation Kruger was an overwhelming success, introducing 140 million counterfeit British pounds into England, which destabilized the country's high finance and caused severe inflation. Another of Heydrich's traits was his skill in extreme sports, particularly in piloting aircraft. For example, aboard a Luftwaffe plane, he carried out several reckless missions. First during the invasion of Norway in 1940, and later in the campaign against the Soviet Union in 1941. It was during the latter that his aircraft was shot down, forcing Heydrich to make an emergency landing in an area under Red Army control. Miraculously, and against all odds, he managed to evade Soviet patrols sent to capture him and return unscathed to German lines. Understandably, this daring behavior earned him a severe reprimand from Hitler, who accused him of being utterly reckless for risking capture by the enemy, when he was the man who knew more secrets than anyone in the Third Reich. As a consequence of the Second World War, in the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, formerly Czechoslovakia, a wave of demonstrations and strikes by the Czech population against the German occupiers forced the dismissal of Reich Protector Konstantin von Neurath in favor of Reinhard Heydrich, who assumed charge of this new administration. On the 29th of September 1941, the leader of the Gestapo ultimately earned the nickname the Butcher of Prague for arresting and executing any dissident. At the same time, however, he implemented social measures that reduced protests among the Czech population, such as raising workers' wages, increasing social security benefits, and reducing working hours. On the 20th of January 1942, Reinhard Heydrich was chosen as the highest representative of the SS during the Wannsee Conference. As host of this meeting, Heydrich outlined before all those present, mostly NSDAP members and representatives from various ministries of the Reich, the plan for the final solution, through which the Holocaust would be implemented, the gathering, deportation, and extermination in concentration camps by means of gas chambers of millions of Jews from across Europe. In fact, the previous year, the blonde beast, as his enemies called him, had already been responsible in Ukraine for the massacre of 35,000 people, mostly Jews, during the mass shootings at Babi Yar. Meanwhile, in Great Britain, Prime Minister Winston Churchill expressed his dissatisfaction with the Czech resistance, since, unlike other occupied nations, it had carried out very few armed actions against Third Reich authorities. For this reason, it was decided to employ the Czechoslovak Infantry Brigade, made up of exiles serving in the British Army, to parachute into Prague and assassinate Reich protector Reinhard Heydrich. Thus, under the name of Operation Anthropoid, 3 Czech paratroopers, Josef Valkik, Jan Kubis, and Josef Gabčík, jumped from a Royal Air Force plane on the outskirts of the Czechoslovak capital and went into hiding for 5 months in the underground, studying Heydrich's daily movements one by one. On the morning of the 27th of May, 1942, the Czech commandos Josef Valkik, Jan Kubis, and Josef Gabčík prepared an ambush against Heydrich's car at an intersection between Holosová Street and Zenklova Street, knowing that this spot formed part of the Reich protector's daily 25-kilometer route aboard his Mercedes-Benz Cabriolet, license plate S3, from his residence in Jungfern Breslau to Prague Castle. Curiously, on the day of the attack, Heydrich was delayed by 1 hour, which almost aborted the mission, until Valkik, using the reflection of a mirror from a distance, signaled to his 2 companions that the car was approaching, with Heydrich in the back seat and his driver, Johannes Klein, at the wheel. As soon as Gabčík had his target within firing range, he raised his Sten submachine gun, which at the last instant jammed. Heydrich, who saw everything, realized what was happening and drew his Luger pistol to defend himself. However, at that precise moment, Kubis threw a grenade that exploded against the rear wheel, scattering shrapnel over the car's body. At first, the action seemed to have failed, because Heydrich stepped out of the vehicle and fired at Kubis, who miraculously escaped by jumping onto a bicycle. The driver, Klein, also chased Gabčík for several meters until the latter stopped and opened fire, wounding him slightly before fleeing into the nearby vegetation. Once the shooting ended, Heydrich returned to the car, only then noticing an intense pain in his back, as a piece of grenade shrapnel had struck him. Immediately after the attack by the Czech resistance, Reinhard Heydrich was taken to Bulovka Hospital, which was cordoned off by armed SS men. Upon arrival, fearing that Czech doctors might try to kill him, he ordered that only German professionals attend to him. For this reason, he had to wait a long time until Heinrich Himmler arrived with his full medical team. According to the official medical report, the wounds were not fatal, and his health even seemed to improve for several days. However, against all expectations, after about a week, Heydrich's condition worsened dramatically. An X-ray revealed that fragments of horsehair from the car seat had remained inside the wound, slowly causing a septic infection. Unable to do anything to save him, Heydrich died on the 4th of June, 1942, at the age of 38. Almost as if he were a head of state, Reinhard Heydrich was granted a spectacular ceremony in his honor, as ordered by Adolf Hitler. First, a massive demonstration was organized in Prague, gathering more than 1.5 million people, before his coffin was transported aboard a train, accompanied by an SS honor guard, all the way to the Chancellery in Berlin. Finally, his body was placed in a funeral car that paraded through the streets of the capital to the sound of the Siegfried Funeral March, composed by Richard Wagner, before being buried at the Invalidenfriedhof Cemetery. The Reich protector Reinhard Heydrich was the first and last high-ranking SS officer to be eliminated in an assassination during the Second World War. Curiously, he would be remembered more in death than in life, for in retaliation the SS executed more than 5,000 Czech dissidents across Czechoslovakia, in addition to carrying out the Lidice massacre, in which the entire village was destroyed as an example, and all of its 250 inhabitants, men, women, and children, were killed.